My name is Marianne Potter. I'm 29 years old, and the night I proposed to the man I loved was the night I learned how fast a heartbeat can turn to silence. I'd spent 3 weeks planning every detail because that's who I am. I build things, houses, bridges, moments. My friends joke that I even schedule my emotions. Maybe they're right. But love, I thought, was one thing worth building carefully. And Alex, he was the foundation I trusted. That evening, the rooftop shimmered under strings of warm fairy lights. The city below glittered like scattered gold dust, and the air smelled faintly of grilled rosemary chicken. Our closest friends filled the terrace, glasses, clinking music drifting. I'd coordinated everything right down to the playlist that would start when I adjusted my earring. Mia was there too, my best friend since college. She was radiant in her crimson dress, laughing easily, floating between groups. She'd helped me plan every second. When I caught her eye across the crowd, she flashed me a thumbs up. I thought it meant good luck. Later, I realized it meant game over. Alex arrived late, looking effortless in his black shirt, his sleeves rolled up. The kind of man who never seemed to need to prepare because charm was stitched into his DNA. He kissed my cheek distractedly, already glancing at his phone. I told myself he was nervous. He'd sensed something special tonight. I refused to see the truth that his eyes were lit by messages that weren't from me. We sat through dinner, laughter echoing around the long table. I barely tasted the food. My mind kept jumping to the small velvet box hidden in my purse. I touched it under the table, feeling the steady pulse of its secret. My fingers trembled. When dessert plates were cleared, I caught Mia's gaze. My cue. She nodded. I stood my chair, scraping the tile softly. Conversations died down. Phones discreetly lifted. I felt their anticipation hang in the air like perfume. The soft notes of our song began to play. I walked toward Alex. He looked confused at first, a lopsided grin forming, as if he thought this was a toast. Marianne, what? Before he could finish, I dropped to one knee. A collective gasp rippled through our friends. The city lights shimmered off the ring as I opened the box. My voice came out steady, rehearsed, yet trembling at the edges. Alex Hale, you've made my life bigger, braver, louder. I don't want to keep imagining a future without you. Will you marry me? For one perfect heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then he laughed. At first, it was small, awkward, disbelieving. Then it grew loud enough to drown out the music. Oh my God, he said, covering his face. You're serious. Every sound vanished. The laughter hung there, sharp as broken glass. I don't understand, I stammered, the ring trembling in my hand. He exhaled, still smiling in disbelief. Marianne, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Something inside me snapped quiet. The friends around us shifted, unsure whether to laugh or look away. I heard Mia's nervous giggle, that same lilting sound she made when caught doing something wrong. Embarrassing myself, I repeated, barely a whisper. Alex's smile faltered. He looked over my shoulder toward the crowd. His eyes softened. Mia, he called. The name hit like a stone to the chest. My hand went numb, the ring box slipping from my grasp and thudding onto the tile. Mia stepped forward, hesitating only a moment before standing beside him. Her hand brushed his arm, too familiar, too casual. My body forgot how to breathe. Wait, I said, shaking my head slowly. What is this? Mia's lips parted, trembling with false sympathy. Marianne, we didn't mean for it to happen. Didn't mean, I laughed once, a hollow cracking sound. You helped me plan this. Alex rubbed the back of his neck. It's not her fault. We just connected. You're amazing, but you're always planning everything. I needed something real. Real, my voice was barely audible. You mean secret. Someone's phone camera blinked red. Somewhere a glass shattered. None of it mattered. The world had shrunk to the two of them, the man I loved and the friend I trusted, standing together under the fairy lights I'd hung to celebrate our love. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the ring or demand answers. The silence inside me was heavier than any sound could be. I bent down, picked up the fallen box, and closed it carefully. The click echoed through the still night. Alex reached out. Marianne. I stepped back. Don't. He froze. For the first time, his easy confidence cracked. I looked at both of them, their faces, their trembling hands, their guilt dressed up as pity. Congratulations, I said quietly. You deserve each other. Then I turned and walked away. Past the table of stunned friends. Past the waiters pretending not to stare. Through the rooftop doors and down into the dim hallway. The city noise faded behind me, replaced by the low hum of my own heartbeat. In the elevator mirror, my reflection looked almost peaceful eyes, dry, lips calm like a statue that hadn't yet learned how to break. I clutched the closed velvet box in my palm, its corners digging into my skin until it hurt enough to remind me I was still alive. When the doors opened onto the street, the night air hit me like a slap. Somewhere above, laughter drifted faintly from the rooftop, hers, maybe both. I didn't look up. That night I drove home with my headlights off for half a block, letting the darkness swallow me. Then I turned them back on, one by one, like relighting a life that refused to stay extinguished. By the time I reached my apartment, the ring in my hand felt like a stone pulled from a grave. I set it on the counter beside his half-finished mug of coffee and whispered to the empty room, "You won't haunt me." The silence didn't answer, but for the first time it listened. The morning after felt like walking through fog made of glass. Every breath cut a little, every movement echoed too loud. The bed still held his shape. The pillow smelled like his cologne cedar and smoke. I stripped the sheets before I could think throwing them into a black trash bag. No sorting, no folding, just erasure. My name is Marianne Potter, and if I couldn't plan love, I'd plan the demolition of it. I brewed coffee I wouldn't drink. I opened the blinds and let too much light in because grief hates sunlight. Then I sat at my desk, the one I used for designing homes, and wrote a list. At the top, reclaim control. Below it, 4 tasks. Block Alex. Block Mia. Pack everything that carries their fingerprints. Change the locks. That was all. Not a plan for revenge, not even closure. Just logistics, because logic was the only lifeboat I had. I started with the phone. His name, once at the top of every call log, now hovered there like a ghost. Block. The phone asked if I was sure. Yes. Then Mia. Blocking her was faster. It didn't even ask me if I was sure. I wish hearts came with that option. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, but everything else had stopped. I walked to the bedroom and opened the closet. Half of it was his shirts, jackets, a tie I'd picked out for our first anniversary. The smell of him rose like smoke from a fire that had long since burned out. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My body had frozen grief into precision. I pulled out an empty box and started packing shirt, cologne, watch, cufflinks, all folded without thought. I didn't even pause when I reached a framed photo of us laughing at the beach. Into the box it went. It took 3 hours. By the end, 6 boxes stood by the door like silent witnesses. I snapped a photo and sent it to Rachel, our mutual friend, the one least likely to twist my words into gossip. His things are ready. Tell him to send someone to pick them up. Do not give him my new address. Her reply came within seconds. Marianne, are you okay? I didn't answer. I turned my phone face down and walked to the bathroom. The mirror stared back, unkind but honest. I looked composed. Too composed. It's funny how devastation can look like control when you're trying hard enough. At 2:17 a.m., I called a locksmith. He arrived groggy, rubbing his eyes, muttering about emergency fees. While he worked, I packed a duffel bag, just essentials. Laptop, running shoes, one photo of my parents. When he handed me the new keys, I stared at them like they were relics of a new religion. A new start, a new rule, they no longer exist. The next week dissolved into patterns. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. My body was a machine powered by caffeine and resentment. The pain dulled, transforming from sharp agony to something quieter, a steady ache that hummed beneath my skin. At the gym, I learned to breathe again. The rhythm of the treadmill replaced the rhythm of his voice. Every step felt like scraping away a layer of him. I'd run until my lungs burned and my thoughts went blank. One night while running, I caught my reflection in the window, a ghostly outline of a woman I didn't recognize. She looked stronger, even if she didn't feel it yet. I whispered to her, "Yay, you're still here. That's enough." Work helped too. Architecture is about rebuilding, turning chaos into order. I poured myself into a new project, sketching late into the night, hands steady, while the rest of me wasn't. Still, sometimes I'd wake at 3 a.m., convinced I heard his laugh in the hallway or her perfume in the elevator. I'd sit up heart-pounding only to find the apartment still and foreign. Healing isn't noble. It's repetitive. It's deleting old playlists and realizing one of them was still called Our Song. It's hearing the first few notes and skipping it before the lyrics can bruise you. A month passed. The apartment began to look like mine. No trace of him left. Even the air felt cleaner. But peace is a tricky thing. It hides where guilt can't reach, but regret still can. I caught myself wondering not about them, but about me. How did I not see it? How do two people betray you right in front of your eyes, while you're busy decorating the stage for your own heartbreak? One night, sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, I found the velvet box again. The ring gleamed under the soft lamplight. It was beautiful, cruelly so. I opened it once, then closed it, listening to that same sharp click. It sounded less like an ending this time, and more like a door locking shut. I placed it in a drawer, not as a keepsake, but as evidence. Proof that I could survive the worst night of my life and still wake up to mornings that asked nothing from me, except that I keep breathing. I didn't forgive them. I didn't hate them either. They were simply gone. And in their absence, I felt something strange, a small, quiet space inside me where love might one day grow again. But not for them. Never for them. It had been 5 weeks since the rooftop. I could measure time by the small milestones of forgetting. The day I no longer checked my phone in the mornings expecting his name, the day I threw out his leftover shampoo, the night I realized the silence in my apartment no longer scared me. I thought I was getting better, until the ghost came back this time through the phone. It was a Tuesday morning, humid and heavy. I was at the gym halfway through a run sweat slick on my skin lungs burning, in a way that felt like control. My phone buzzed on the treadmill console. At first I ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. Unknown number. For 1 second my heart did a stupid thing it hoped. I slowed the treadmill. The message preview glowed. Unknown. We need to talk. 3 words. Ordinary, harmless. Except nothing about them felt harmless. I didn't answer. I increased the speed and kept running, pounding the belt until my legs screamed. But my mind kept replaying those words like a bad song I couldn't shut off. When the next message came, I was already expecting it. Unknown. What you did was cruel, Marianne. You humiliated me. A laugh escaped my throat before I could stop at a sound so sharp the woman beside me turned. He was saying I'd humiliated him. The treadmill whirred louder, drowning out the bitterness in my chest. I finished my run hit stop and stood still while the machine slowed. My reflection in the gym mirror looked calm, but my pulse was hammering. I picked up my phone. Another message lit up the screen. Unknown. You pushed me away. You were obsessed with planning everything. I just wanted to feel alive. There it was. The script I'd seen 100 times in the movies he used to make me watch. He'd rewritten the story. I was no longer the woman betrayed. I was the villain who drove him into someone else's arms. I didn't respond. I set the phone down on the console and wiped my face with my towel. Then another message buzzed in faster, almost frantic. Unknown, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Unknown, Mia said you'd understand. Unknown. Can we just talk? Please. I took a long drink of water, letting the cold spread through me. My hands were steady. My voice when I finally spoke to no one was even. No, Alex. We don't talk anymore. I tapped the screen. Block number. The button turned gray. It was the easiest decision I'd ever made. I walked out of the gym into the late morning sunlight. The city noise hit me like a living thing, cars honking, people laughing, the scent of coffee drifting from the corner cafe. It all felt clean, real, uncontaminated. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like the world was conspiring to remind me of him. The air tasted new, but ghosts rarely go quietly. That night, as I sat on the couch sketching designs for a client, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I ignored it, but the message appeared on my lock screen. Unknown. I can't sleep. I keep seeing you leaving. You didn't even say goodbye. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from something colder. I typed a reply, hesitated, then deleted it. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to know I still bled. Instead, I powered the phone off and placed it face down. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in weeks. Days passed. No new messages came. I almost believed the haunting was over. Then one Friday night, a private number called while I was in bed reading. The ring cut through the quiet like a blade. I stared at it until it stopped. 10 minutes later, a final text appeared. Unknown, I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time, letting the words sink in. Then I whispered to the dark I am. You just wouldn't recognize it. And that was the truth. Happiness wasn't laughter or grand gestures anymore. It was the stillness that came after. It was waking up to a morning untouched by his name. I deleted the message, cleared the call history, and turned off notifications completely. When I went to sleep that night, the last thought I had wasn't about Alex or Mia. It was about something simple, something pure. The way the city looked at dawn when it forgot yesterday's storms. I wasn't healed yet, but I was no longer haunted. 3 months after the rooftop, my phone rang again, this time from a name I hadn't deleted. Lisa Tran, Mia's coworker. The human megaphone of gossip. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity, sharp and cold, won. I swiped to answer. Lisa, Marianne. Oh my God, you actually picked up. Her voice rushed out like a gust of perfume in desperation. Listen, I know you said not to talk to you, but this is serious. It's about Alex. The name landed like a pebble in water ripples, but no waves. What about him? I asked flatly. He's a mess, she said. Like bad. He and Mia broke up. He's drinking all the time. He got fired from that tech job, and Lisa. Yeah, you have 30 seconds. You have. There was a pause, like she hadn't expected a timer on her pity speech. Then she barreled on. He keeps talking about you. Says he ruined everything. He told me to tell you that he's sorry, that he still loves you. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. The ceiling fan hummed above me, cutting the air into even pieces. That's unfortunate, I said. Marianne, come on, she pleaded. He's not the same. He regrets everything. You should at least talk to him. Closure, you know closure. The word people use when they want to reopen the wound just to watch it bleed. I already had closure, I said quietly. It came the moment I realized I didn't care. Lisa stammered. He's really hurting. Mia's gone, and I cut her off, voice, calm but sharp. Lisa, do you remember the night on the rooftop? The night he laughed while I was on my knees. The night she stood beside him pretending it was love. The silence on the other end told me she did. I remember she whispered. Good, I said. Then remember this too. What you destroy for excitement, you don't get to rebuild for comfort. Marianne, please, he's miserable. Misery is a teacher, I said. Let him learn. I ended the call. The last thing I heard was her sharp inhale, like she wanted to stop me but didn't know how. Then I blocked her number. The silence after was thick but not heavy. Just quiet. Necessary. I sat there for a while staring at my coffee table. On it lay a notepad filled with sketches for a new client's home, a modern cottage overlooking the ocean. I'd written a note to myself in the corner weeks ago, designed for peace, not perfection. For a moment I smiled, because that's exactly what I'd been doing with my life, building something new from the rubble, not perfect but peaceful. Still, the human heart is strange. Even as I smiled, a part of me wondered what had really happened between them. Had Mia betrayed him the way they'd betrayed me? Curiosity is an old habit, but I didn't feed it. I wasn't the same woman who would scroll, stalk, or analyze. I had learned that sometimes indifference is the sharpest knife. Instead, I picked up my pencil and kept sketching. The lines were clean, balanced, controlled. Later that night, I made tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights blink like tired eyes. Somewhere out there, Alex was unraveling, trying to stitch together a narrative where he wasn't the villain. And Mia, maybe she was realizing that excitement doesn't last long when it's built on betrayal. But none of it was my story anymore. That realization didn't come with fireworks or music. It came quietly like an exhale you didn't know you'd been holding. Forgiveness number peace, yes. At midnight, I wrote in my journal, closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. Then I added one more line because it felt like the truth deserved punctuation. I don't need his apology to stop bleeding. I closed the notebook, turned off the lights, and for the first time in months, I didn't dream about the rooftop. I dreamed of the sea. And in that dream, the water didn't pull me under. It carried me forward. A year had passed since the rooftop, long enough for memories to fade from color to sepia, long enough that I could say his name without feeling it cut. I wasn't healed because of time. I was healed because I had stopped looking backward. That morning, I met a colleague for coffee at a small cafe downtown. It was the kind of place Alex would have hated: minimalist decor, mismatched mugs, no Wi-Fi. I liked that. It made conversation real again. I arrived early, ordered an Americano, and sat by the window. Rain tapped lightly on the glass, turning the street outside into a watercolor of umbrellas and headlights. I pulled out my notebook, ready to review some sketches, when a shadow fell over my table. Marianne, his voice. For 1 second, my body forgot the year that had passed. My pulse stuttered, then steadied. I looked up. Alex stood there, uninvited. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders rounded, eyes dulled. The confidence that used to fill every room he entered had collapsed into something quieter, almost fragile. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair longer, unkempt. I didn't speak. I just placed my pen down and folded my hands. Can I sit? He asked. The question wasn't really a question. He was already pulling out the chair across from me. You look different, he said finally, his eyes searching mine for something familiar. Good different. I nodded. I am different. He smiled weakly, the kind that used to melt me. It didn't anymore. I'm sorry, he blurted out. I know you probably don't care, but I needed to say it. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Go ahead then. Mia and I, he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. We broke up months ago. It was a disaster. She's not who I thought she was. I was stupid. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I stared at him for a long moment. What do you want from me, Alex? He looked down. Nothing. Just to tell you, I regret everything. I should have chosen you. I should have stayed. His words fell between us like broken glass, sharp, useless. I could have told him how many nights I'd cried until my throat went raw, how his laughter haunted my dreams. But those memories belonged to another version of me. Instead, I asked softly, why now? He looked up, eyes wet. Because you were right. You said once that I'd realize what I lost. I thought you were trying to guilt me, but you were just telling the truth. I leaned back, letting his confession hang in the air. The cafe around us hummed quietly, clinking cups, low chatter, the soft hiss of steamed milk. Life moved on while he spoke of a past I'd already buried. I don't want your guilt, I said at last. I don't even need your apology. What happened between us, it burned everything down, and I rebuilt from the ashes. He winced. You make it sound so easy. It wasn't easy, I said, but it was necessary. He reached across the table, fingers trembling slightly. Can we start over? I almost laughed. Start over. Alex, you and I aren't even the same people anymore. You're a ghost, and I stopped believing in hauntings. The silence stretched between us, thick and final. Then his expression hardened, defensive, angry. You're so cold, he said quietly. I remember when you used to look at me like I hung the moon. Now you look right through me. I met his gaze evenly. That's because the man I loved isn't sitting here. He died on that rooftop when he decided to humiliate me for sport. He flinched. The words landed clean. I reached for my bag, stood up, and draped my coat over my arm. I hope you find peace, Alex. Just not in my direction. I turned toward the counter. As I did, the door opened, and there was Lucas, my colleague, waving from the entrance. He saw the tension immediately, his brows knitting. All good, he asked softly. Yes, I said, slipping my notebook into my bag. Just closing an old chapter. When I looked back, Alex was staring at me with something I'd never seen before, complete powerlessness. Marianne, he said, standing halfway, I did love you. I paused, not out of hesitation, but because I wanted the final word to belong to me, not him. I know, I said. That's what makes it tragic. Then I left. As the cafe door swung shut behind me, I heard the faint scrape of his chair and maybe a muffled sob. But I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city smelled fresh, washed clean. I walked beside Lucas toward the next block, the sound of our steps calm and steady. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a quiet walk on a wet street, your past sitting alone behind a fogged window. That was the moment I realized something vital. I hadn't just survived Alex. I'd outgrown him. 6 months after the cafe, I was standing on top of a mountain that smelled of pine and rain. The sky was endless, streaked with violet and gold. The air was thin enough to sting my lungs, but the ache felt alive, earned. Almost there, Lucas called from a few steps ahead, his grin breaking through the fog like sunlight. His hand reached back for mine, steady and warm. I took it without hesitation. It still amazes me how peace can arrive in such quiet ways. No grand entrances, no lightning strikes. Just someone who walks beside you instead of ahead of you. We'd met months earlier through work, a joint project between his firm and mine. He was everything Alex wasn't, grounded, kind, unshaken by silence. He never filled empty spaces with noise. He let them breathe. Somewhere between late-night sketches and shared coffee breaks, the spaces between us began to close naturally, without planning or performance. It wasn't fireworks, it was gravity. Now on this mountain, we reached the summit just as the sun dipped low. The world fell away beneath us, rolling forests, distant lakes, ribbons of road catching the light. I turned slowly, letting the wind whip through my hair. This is it, Lucas said softly. Your kind of view-structured chaos. I laughed, the sound genuine and easy. And your kind of peace somehow quiet and loud at the same time. He squeezed my hand, his eyes reflecting the fire of the sunset. Marianne, he said, I'm glad you didn't stop believing in love. I didn't, I replied. I just stopped believing it had to hurt. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the trees below, and a hawk circled far above, free unbound. My chest felt full in a way it hadn't in years. I stepped closer to him, my fingers brushing the small box hidden in my jacket pocket. I had carried it up the trail all morning, its weight both terrifying and comforting. Lucas, I said quietly. He turned to me curious. There's something I want to do. I dropped my backpack to the ground, heart thudding with that old familiar rhythm, the same one I'd felt a year ago under fairy lights. But this time it wasn't fear or desperation, it was clarity. I took a slow breath, knelt on the sun-warmed rock, and pulled out the box. Lucas blinked in surprise. Marianne, what are you? Don't interrupt me, I teased, smiling. My voice trembled, but not from uncertainty. I opened the box. The ring wasn't flashy, just a small raw diamond set on a slender band. Honest, unpolished, real. The last time I knelt like this, I began my voice catching on memory. I lost everything I thought love was. I thought I was building forever. Turns out I was just decorating a cage. Lucas's eyes softened. Marianne. I shook my head gently. This time is different, because I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for partnership. For quiet mornings and stupid inside jokes, and a life that doesn't need an audience. I held up the ring. Will you marry me? For half a second he didn't move, then he knelt too, facing me, laughing through a breath that turned into something close to tears. Yes, he said, 1,000 times yes. I slid the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly, as if the world had been saving the right moment for me to get it right. He pulled me up, wrapping his arms around me as the wind howled and the horizon blazed orange. When he kissed me, it was nothing like the cinematic kind that used to make my heart ache. It was quiet, sure. A promise whispered instead of shouted. And in that instant, the old rooftop flickered in my memory, not as pain, but as proof. The girl who had been humiliated under fairy lights had become a woman standing above the clouds, unashamed, unbroken, unafraid. I looked at Lucas and smiled. The view's not bad. He grinned. Told you it was worth the climb. As the sun sank behind the ridge, I took one last glance at the world below the glittering city lights in the distance, the hum of life continuing, indifferent, and infinite. A year ago, I'd walked away from love under a storm of laughter and betrayal. Now I was walking toward it under a sky of light and wind. Some stories end with revenge. Mine ended with release. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living beautifully.